Okay, on to the next repair. Got a 2014 Hyundai Elantra, and we are working on rear disc brake replacement. This particular one, we're going to be replacing the rotors and the brake pads. What the customer is experiencing when they're backing up, they're hearing a loud noise that they've tried machining rotors, didn't get rid of it, or tried replacing brake pads, didn't get rid of it. So we're going to replace both assemblies and see if we can fix that problem. Okay, so first things first for this process, I'm going to have to remove the caliper bracket bolts, which they have two. I've already loosened them. I'm not just grabbing them and loosening them up. So I've already broke those loose. So I'm going to remove both of these, which is a 14 millimeter. And once we do that, we'll remove that bracket out of the way and just pry it off. Like so. And for this sake, it's going to be, if you look at this caliper here, if you can see the inside of there, it has little almost like teeth inserts there. The reason for that is this is a twist in caliper, so I can't just get a vise and squeeze this or push it back in. I'm actually going to have to twist this back in as if I'm tightening it to get that piston to go retrieve back in. So it's sticking out about that far there. We need to get this piece flush with this caliper itself. Okay, the next thing is I'm going to take these two bolts off the back side right here. There's one there, and there's one right above it. Hopefully you can see it. And take this caliper bracket off. We did get new brake pads, so we're not going to be using these, even though these brake pads still seem to be fairly new. We're not going to take any chances, and we're going to go ahead and replace those. So I'm going to go ahead and break loose this caliper bracket and hopefully. So I'll take this caliper bracket off and then we'll be able to access the rotor. So I'm using my ratcheting wrench, this is one of my favorite wrenches, and to break this loose. The reason I like using these, especially on stuff like this, it gives me a little bit of leverage. You know, most of the time these bolts are super tight. So this gives me a chance to put a little leverage on it as I'm trying to loosen those bolts. So it's not so much of a struggle. So, okay, there's one bolt, all right. And this is a 14 millimeter. So like a lot of makes and models, they tend to use the same size nuts and bolts on a lot of their assemblies. This particular one, Hyundai, they like to use 12 millimeter, 14 millimeter, 17, and I believe 19 is pretty much their main bolt sizes for most of their applications. All right, so we got both of the caliper bolt brackets off. We got the caliper itself bolt out. There's your caliper bracket. So what Hyundai does, they like to put some set screws to kind of hold the rotor in place and keep it in the same position every time. So I'm going to use a impact screwdriver and try to get those out. All right, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I got those screws out, and actually I didn't have to use an impact screwdriver. I just used a regular screwdriver and I was able to get them out. That's one of them there. And so I took both of those out, and now the rotor was on there stuck. I just gave it a little tap and it was able to break loose. So remove that rotor. Okay, and again we're replacing these, so we're just going to discard that rotor. And what I like to do is just check my surface, check my bearings, listen for any abnormal noises while I'm here. You know, a lot of times you're not able to see a lot of this stuff because you have it assembled. So this is a perfect opportunity to check that kind of thing and make sure that you don't have any other concerns you need to look at while you're here. All right, so what I'm gonna go do, I'm gonna go grab the tool out of the tool room so I can compress this, and I'll show you how we're gonna do that. Okay guys, so I got the tool, and this is what it looks like in the case here. And I've already added the adapter that I'm going to use. And those 4 points that stick up are going to sit inside the caliper. So I'm going to try to do this and see if I can show you guys. So there it is. And I'm going to adjust this sleeve back. and that's going to put a little bit of tension on it, but also to not allow this to move out. So it kind of simulates as a brake pad. And then now I'm going to do is twist this end, and it's going to start moving that caliper piston in. Well, that's why it's not easy to do with one hand. So give me a second, guys. Let me see if I can find me a video recorder.
What?
Right there. All right, so we're gonna give this a shot again. Is it recording? Okay, so I'm gonna put that back in. I'm gonna retighten this sleeve, and I'm gonna try to hold this, and now you can see it twisting in. Every once in a while, as you're twisting this in, you may have to back this up and retighten that sleeve, and then retighten, and then you can tighten it back down again. And that's it. So once you get it all the way tight, then you adjust this sleeve to where you go back in, and now you can take it out. So now you can see how that piston has pushed in, and it's almost flush where we need it at. So, and that's gonna work out great for us. So that right there, that's how we're gonna adjust the piston and push it back in. All right, so I have put the rotor back on, and I put my two set screws that hold that tight. Again, remember, I'm putting on a new rotor. So, and whenever we're putting on rotors and replacing our brakes, we want to use this stuff here. It's called caliper grease. Different companies make it and they call it different stuff. But what the main purpose of these is to, right there where the brake pads sit on the caliper bracket, we want to make sure that it's able to slide real easy. So, for instance, there's the brake pad there, and there's the original tab that came with it, and this kit came with new ones, so we're gonna grease the new ones, and here's what it looks like. This chemical isn't always blue, sometimes it's clear, and all you really need is right here where the calipers are or the brake pads are going to sit. I want to put a little bit there, and what I like to do is put it right on the edge, because when I slide on the brake pads, it's going to slide the grease towards the middle and grease the whole rail. So you really don't need a lot. If you can see, I just put very little on there. And after that's said and done, on these brake pads, let me show you a picture of them right here. Okay, so both of these have they're smooth on the back, but this one has kind of some little indentions that pop out. So you got to worry about not letting those hit that bracket that or on the caliper where it spins in and out, that right there. So you got to make sure the smooth side is going back there. So that's going to be this one here. It's smooth. And simply what I'm going to do, and if you don't know, this right here, this is a squealer. And when this brake pad wears down all the way to that, you're going to start hearing that scraping. You want to hear that scraping before you hear it hit this shoe. Because when it hits this backing plate, you're down to bare metal, and it's going to ruin your rotor. Whether that right there is just going to cause a few scratches in your rotor and make it savable. So simply, I'm just going to install that brake pad there. And then on the front side, I'll get my other one and I'll insert it through the bottom first and put that on. So that being said, now it's time for my bracket. Now that my piston is pushed in, it should just slip right over like so. Just like that. And then I'm going to get my caliper bolts and get those in. Before I tighten any bolts, I want to make sure that both the holes align, because I have had instances where I've tightened one and come to find out the other one didn't align. So you want to tighten down. And my preference is I like to run these bolts down as far as I can by finger. I want to tighten them as much as I can. This way I'm not worried about cross threading or anything. And as long as it rotates freely and I'm able to tighten, I feel pretty safe about it. Okay, so off camera, I went and tightened those caliper bolts, my 14 millimeter, and my brackets are tight, so which were also 14 millimeter, and my rotor there. So we're good to go. You are going to hear some scratching there because this isn't really set correctly quite yet. It'll adjust as I'm driving. And see, there you go. See, it's already quieting because I moved it around. But there he is. There's our rear disc brakes redone. All I got to do now is put on my wheel, tighten it up, and actually I got to do the other side, but then it's ready for a road test. But the other side is going to be the exact same thing. So hopefully that was helpful to you guys. And how do we do a disc brake and rotor swap? Okay guys, one key part I failed to remind you guys of, anytime you take off the brake cap, you want to put a rag on top, something kind of a reminder, also too catches any overflow. And you have to take the cap off as you're depressing the pistons on the caliper because it has nowhere to go. So one thing I failed to mention to you guys is we need to depress the brake pedal and get all the air that's trapped in the system, or that we did when we compressed the calipers. We need to make that shrink back down.